Welcome to the Research Works podcast, brought to you in association with Curtin University and the Healthy Strides Foundation. Your hosts are Dr. Dana Poole and Dr. Ashley Thornton, and together we will interview world-leading researchers in the area of child health to support your practice in being more evidence-based.
The team at the Research Works podcast acknowledges the traditional custodians of the land and waters on which we live and work. We pay our respects to all First Nations peoples, elders past and present, and would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we record this podcast each week, the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation. We recognise their continued connection to this beautiful budja we call home.
Welcome to another episode of the Research Works podcast. And you can hear my voice. We're a little bit excited. Ash, this is a very important milestone, isn't it?
It is indeed, Dana. Today's episode is our 50th episode of the Research Works podcast.
50th episode!
I feel like we should have some fireworks.
I feel like we should. Hopefully we can do some sound effects into that. We might have to ask producer Ed to
crowds cheering.
Yeah.
Rounds of applause.
Oh, I feel like it's amazing. That's we started in February in 2021, so we've spoken to 50 researchers, 50 papers, 50 research teams.
Oh, it's incredible, and it's I feel like I've learned so much over this time, and like you said, it's not just 50 papers, but it's 50 groups of people working to address really important clinical questions and problems that. I feel like, we've all benefited so much from their time and effort.
We really have. And I've loved spending the time with you, and we've been able just to talk about so many different things. I know when we first spoke about the podcast, we were just hoping for a few people to listen to us. So we're really grateful that people are listening to us. We literally have thousands upon thousands of downloads, and we just love the idea that, we can share knowledge, and we are able to do so through this platform. So thank you so much for listening and for being on the journey with us. And just a reminder, do make sure you remember to subscribe to the podcast as well. Just a note, we've just realised that there's been a few privacy changes particularly in Europe, that have now spread across the world. So I think if you don't subscribe, you actually don't know if we record new episodes. So really important, that we're having new episodes.
Especially with this one, number 50.
Number 50.
But we are so grateful to all of the people who tune in and listen regularly. So thank you and keep doing it.
Yeah, that's right. On a side note, that means 50 questions that Ed's had to come up with in the Tell It to Ed segment too.
Yeah, he should have an honorary PhD or something by now, shouldn't he?
They're giving those out these days, aren't they?
Oh, that sounds good to
me. Well, for our 50th episode, we are making our way across to Canada to speak to the wonderful Paula Chagas to discuss a very interesting paper titled Development of the Gross Motor Function Family Report for Children with Cerebral Palsy, which was published in Physiotherapy Canada. Welcome today, Paula.
Welcome.
Hi, thank you for inviting me to be here.
Oh, we are so excited to have you because I think, for Dana and I, this paper took our interest straight away. And,
absolutely.
In this telehealth world we find ourselves in, it's so great to see a whole body of work that's being developed to really adapt to this new way of working, especially given that valid and reliable assessments are so important. I think, this work and this paper that we're going to be discussing today makes a really important contribution to the field.
Does. Yeah. So cool. Well done.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. We're really excited with it. Yeah, it's going really well.
Oh, that's good. We can't wait to get into it.
Yes, but before we do that, we'll tell our listeners a little bit about you, Paula. Paula is a postdoctoral fellow at CanChild and an associate professor at the School of Physical Therapy at the Federal University of Juiz de Fora, Brazil. She graduated as a physical therapist in 1998 and has done her master's and PhD in rehabilitation sciences. Since the beginning of her career, Paula has worked with children with disabilities. She's a researcher and advisor at the Graduate Program in Rehabilitation Sciences and Physical and Functional Performance, UFJF, and is currently coordinating a multi-centered project called Participar Brazil in collaboration with CanChild. Her postdoc project, which is supervised by Dr. Peter Rosenbaum, is on the validation of a new measurement tool, based on the gross motor function measure called the Gross Motor Function Family Report, or GMF-FR, which aims to measure gross motor activity in the home and community settings reported by the families. And I'm sure everyone's really interested and excited about that.
Yes.
And you're about to hear much more about it because it's our topic of conversation for today.
Yes, absolutely.
Before we get into the nitty-gritty of the paper, we like to start our episodes with an icebreaker question. And today's question is, what is your most used emoji?
Wow, I had to check it a lot because I really like to use emojis in my text. But today, the most used emoji that I have is the strong arm. I'm strong.
Nice one.
I love that.
That is actually a really good one.
Yeah.
Power.
Yeah.
I really like that one.
Yeah, and so many different
Power,
ways
yeah.
you can use it as well.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. That's a good one. I think I probably need to use that more. The one I think I use the most of is always, like, you never know, I guess, how someone's going to take a message because you can read it with whatever tone.
Yeah.
So I always have the laughy face one where it's like not just a laughing face, the tears are coming out, and sometimes my head tilts to the side. So I sort of alternate between the two just so people are really clear that I'm just like laughing away at it and it really is a joke.
Yeah.
It's a commonly used one.
That's a good one too.
Yeah. That one was a very close second for me, but this probably says, I don't know what this says about me, but I went and had a look, and the one that I used the most, that one was the second one, but the one I use the most is the one where the lady is just slapping her
The face palm. That's a good one.
Yeah, that's the one.
That's a really good one.
So yeah, I'm doing a lot of face palming.
I use that a lot, actually.
I think does describe us a little bit, depending on our moods. Yeah.
That's right.
That's right.
All right, but I'm going to throw to you now, Dana, for a little overview of the paper, and then we'll get on to some more serious topics of
fabulous.
conversation.
That's good. Okay, so the purpose of this study was to describe the development of a family-completed, modified version of the gross motor function measure, to report gross motor function in children with cerebral palsy within their own natural environments. The Gross Motor Function Family Report was developed from expert opinion, which involved 13 experienced clinicians and researchers. Modifications were made to items, scoring, wording to enable and facilitate families in being able to carry out the assessments at home. And with 30 items having been selected, a new tool has been developed and will now undergo validation for use within the home and community environments.
Oh, thanks, Dana.
No problem.
Paula, like we said, this is, such important work, and I was hoping that you could start by telling us why you and your team thought to develop a family report version of the GMFM.
Well, it all started during the pandemic, right? I started my talk with Dr. Peter Rosenbaum in my postdoc fellowship interest through this big study in Brazil called Participa Brazil.
Yeah.
And our work in Brazil is to rebuild the gross motor function curves in a low-income setting. So we want to follow children in Brazil and see how they perform throughout the years, because we believe that our course of development is different from high-income countries.
Sure.
So we wrote the study protocol. We planned to do in-person GMFMs. And then the pandemic hit.
Yeah.
Oh my, how are we going to evaluate our children now?
Yeah.
And then we started talking about gross motor function. Is that the best way to evaluate gross motor function, the way we do in clinic?
Yeah.
Because when we put children in a optimized context, in an optimized rehabilitation setting, everything is great and perfect, and we test the capacity of the children, that we think that everything that she can do, does she really do that at home? And we began discussing this. We thought maybe a family reported version would be interesting to see, and we could see which items could be applied at home with an easy way that parents could report us what really they do at home.
Yeah.
So that's where our talk began 2 years ago.
Oh, that's so good. I love how that's how the research question came about. It was really pragmatic.
Yeah.
It was where the world was at, and you just tried to find a solution. I love that. That's really, really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I feel like the pandemic is kind of, you know, obviously telehealth is a big part of it. How our practices had to change to kind of move with the restrictions and the the situation that we find ourselves in. But actually, there's probably a lot of long-term benefits to this work as well, you know, to make things more practical and easier for families to engage with as well.
Absolutely. No, I really love that.
Yeah, and to understand what we do, because mostly the children that we evaluate, sometimes families don't get feedback of what we do because we do it inside our room or a special setting, and we don't tell them what we're doing.
Yeah.
So they don't only in research. If we're doing research, families know what we're doing.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they don't know.
Yeah.
That children are being evaluated, but they don't know the instruments. They don't know what measurements are being taken. So if the family participates in this process, they are much more, they can be really directed by these goals also. They can see what is true for them, right?
Yeah. No, that's really good. So can we just go into some detail about, before we sort of go into what you've selected for this particular measure, can we just take a step back a bit for some of the therapists? I know a lot of therapists will be quite aware of what the GMFM is, but, you know, it never hurts to do a bit of an overview of GMFM as well, because it is essentially the basis of a lot of our conversation. So
Yes.
Can you talk us through, so we know there's the GMFM 88 and the 66. What's the main difference between the two, and why would you choose to use one or the other?
Okay. Well, the GMFM was developed more than 30 years ago, right?
Yep.
So it was a measure that was developed even before the ICF was described.
Wow.
So it is, that's important because the word function in it was described in a way that for us, before it was function, right?
Yeah.
We used to see it before the 2000 that function was activity.
Yes.
So that's a big tricky word in the measure, but we can take it away because it's there, right? It reflects what the children can do. But now we think much more broadly about functioning, right? It's not only that. We know. So the two versions, the 88 version has many more items in supine and lying, lying and rolling, and sitting and crawling. And the 68 version took some of these items away to make the measure more quickly to apply in the clinical practice. So if we have children that are more severely compromised, like GMF-FR and 5, we decide to use the GMFM 88 because we can see more items being performed in lying and rolling and sitting, especially. So we can see more items that they perform in these two dimensions. That's the main reasons of when the first choice to choose one version or the other, right? But if you have a milder children, like a child that's GMF-CS 1 or 2, the GMFM 66 is much more rapid to do. So it's more appropriate. And we even have the more abbreviated versions now, the item set and the basal ceiling versions also. That you can do with 15 items like the basal ceiling. And it's enough to measure function. Right?
And how reliable is the GMFM as a measure, Paula?
Oh, there are many studies showing that it's reliable and valid to measure gross motor function. It's comparable with many other gold standard tools, like has a good correlation, validity with other measurement tools, like the PD and the Bailey and the Peabody, so other measurement tools to evaluate function. And it's really responsive to change. That's an important thing about the tool because it's used to measure change during therapy, especially during common lives of these children, especially in the early years of these child. The GMF-M has been proven to show much more changes in the first 6 years of life. That's when the children more progress, depending on their level of functioning. And then they tend to stabilize their performance, their capacity. But it's important to follow up anyway, because if they lose, if they are losing motor function, something's wrong, right? Then you have to, that's a way for you to see and measure and find out. And intervene, right?
Yeah, that's right. And so the scoring, I guess, has a lot to do with that. So can you just talk us through the scoring of the GMF-M? Because I think that's going to be relevant as we talk about your new measure as well. So can you just talk through that for us?
Yeah. Well, the scoring of the GMF-M is based on a 4-point scale. So you have 0, when the child doesn't do the item, 1 when she does about 10% of the item, 2 when she does between 10% and 90% of the item, and 3 when she scores 100% of the item. That's applied to all the 88 items and to the abbreviated versions also. So you have to use the manual to know what the criteria for each item to be scored. That's really important because you can't only rely on this information, 10%. 90%, because it depends on what the item, right? So the manual is your reference for that, right? So that's important. But it's a good way for the clinic, right? Because you have 4 points. If you have 4 points, you can measure small changes. Like the child is only beginning to do an item, she scores 1. And then suddenly she's a little bit better. She's standing like for 6 seconds instead of 3. She scores a 2. So you can see small changes in functioning. That's important thing of the measure. And now we have, since the beginning of the tool, we have GMI, that's a gross motor ability estimator. That's a software that you can score the abbreviated version, the GMF-M 66 and the others. And it's been updated to a new app that's called the GMF-M app. And it's really good because you have, you can select the version that you are using, and you have a graphic informative of the child's performance through the GMFCS level. And you can have a spider plot according to how she's scoring in each dimensions. And you can really follow up her progression this way. So it's really good. It's a really good tool to use in the clinic and in research.
No, I love that. And I love that, that's also moved along as well. Because I know as a clinician learning how to use the GMF-M, it initially starts quite daunting. So you've got 88 items and you really need to be quite familiar. Because like you said, each item, you can't just go 1 or 2 for this. You do need to look at the manual to understand the differences if you want to pick up the changes. But it is a great measure for that because you can pick up changes.
And Paula, are there other populations that you might use the GMF-M with or for?
Well, it has been validated for children with Down syndrome. That's the only other population that's been validated for. There are some studies in the literature that use with other children with other disabilities, but it's not been validated for that. Like children with myelomeningocele and children with muscular dystrophy, but it's not been validated for these populations. So you can't rely that it's appropriate for it. But for children with Down syndrome, the GMF-88, not the 66 abbreviated version, you can use it. It's good. It's a good measure for children with Down syndrome also.
Great.
And we talked a bit at the start about, terminology, and we talked about, the use of the word function in the title of the measure, and how, the use of the word function wasn't how we might apply it today. And so I hoped that we could spend a little bit of time talking about some of the other terminology that we might use often when we're talking about the GMFM and assessments in general, and work out and unpack the differences between them. So we talk about things like capacity, capability, and performance, and, you know, where we might use that terminology in perhaps different contexts or settings. So could you just tell us a bit about how you define things like capacity, capability, and performance? Maybe we could start with capacity.
So capacity is what really we see in the clinic, right? It's the ability of an individual to execute a task or an action in a uniform or a standard environment. Okay. Like when a child or an adolescent does an item with everything perfect around them. Okay. Like everything
in the bubble.
Yeah. In the bubble, yeah. And the handle is fixed in the wall. The floor doesn't have any bump, any hole. Everything is perfect, right? Yeah. So that's capacity. Yeah. Right? It doesn't reflect real life, unfortunately, because that's not how we live. And performance, it's like what the child really does in the real life. Right. So it's in her natural environment, what she's capable of doing in her real environment. Yeah. Because maybe she has the ability, maybe to take 10 steps in an optimized environment, but at her home, she doesn't have that ability because she's afraid of hitting the wall. She's afraid of going through something and falling down. Yeah. So it's different, right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
A new word in between is capability. It's a person, what she can do in their natural environment. But she has the ability to do it, but she doesn't do it. Yeah. Like it's a between capacity and performance, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like we do need to know the difference between them because, you know, we all have, look, how many times do kids come into clinic and we ask them to do a bit of a walk so we can see how they're walking, and their parents go, all right, do your hospital walk. And they walk, ever so perfectly. And then we go, okay, walk how you normally would walk. And then you see it all, like you really do want to see. So, their capacity to be able to walk that hospital walk is sustained for 10 meters. Yeah. They can't do any longer than that. And you do want to actually know what their everyday looks like, because ultimately that's what we want to try to help, and that's their performance, isn't it? And the same applies to gross motor function.
That's it.
Yeah.
yeah, surely. Yeah.
So,
and we're really worried about that nowadays, because especially in these 2 last years that we suffered, because the children were inside their environment all the time.
That's so true.
What were they really doing?
Yeah.
We don't know.
Yeah.
Because we weren't there.
That's right. Such a good point.
And I suppose that leads really beautifully into the next question that I had for you, Paula, which is, what was in developing the GMF-FR, what was your intent with regards to developing that measure?
So our main concern is to develop something that would be easy for the parents to see at home.
Sure.
That was the main concern, right? Yep. We wanted to select items that were relevant for daily life functioning.
Yeah.
Because some items that may look relevant for us in the clinic, like there are goals that we normally work in the clinic, like walking one step in front of the other.
Yeah.
When we walk a tandem line.
Yeah.
That's relevant for us to see balance and motor planning and other things. But how often do we walk like this in real life?
Yeah. Yeah.
We won't walk like this in real life.
That's true.
We thought of items. We tried to select items that really reflect things that children do in their natural environment.
Yeah.
And that would be easy for parents to see. Oh, I can remember that my child does that or does not that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that was our main concern.
Yeah. So you were trying to, with your new measure, look at something that was easy for parents to be able to use and identify, the items that you were wanting to score, but then also try and tease out the performance side of things rather than the capacity side of things. Is that right?
Yes, yes, that's right. That's right. We wanted to see the performance of children in their natural environments, in their natural day-to-day lives and the homes. Yeah.
And we understand you ended up with 30 items that were selected for families to report on for the GMF-FR. Could you talk us through your process for selecting those 30 items?
That was an interesting process because we were 13 researchers.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we built a table in the Excel with all the items of the GMF-88.
Right.
And everyone scored them independently. Like we looked at all the 88 items of the GMFM.
Yep.
And we selected which ones we thought would be good, which ones we thought that wouldn't be good for a home evaluation, right?
Yeah. With a focus on
this was the first analysis that we made.
Yeah.
Yes. That was a first gross analysis that we made. Oh, this would be interesting to see. Children do this in their daily to day, like rolling the bed. Children roll in the bed, so we can see that. So we selected that and sit in the bed, and we began selecting these items. And then after the 13 researchers selected that, I cross-matched the tables and saw which of these items at least 50% of us agreed. So it was so interesting to see that we agreed in almost all of them. So I can't remember the exact number because we had several meetings to get to a consensus of it, but like one or two maybe items that we scored between 46%, like we were an even number. So like if 6 said that we wanted and 7 didn't want it, it didn't enter. So these items we discussed if we were going to build it or not.
Yes.
But if there was more than these selections, it was automatically off the item. So it was good to see that we agreed in almost of the items that we selected.
Good. Yep.
And in the beginning, we selected 32 items. We were almost close to the end of the measure that we thought that would be appropriate for a family-centered measure.
Yeah.
Right? And then after we selected these items, we went to them again and we thought, how can we do the parents see this in their natural environment? Do they need any special equipment? Do they have to test it? How can we picture this to the parents? Because we want to do a measure that would be easy for them to look and see.
Sure.
Like if they looked at we thought we can use pictures. I think pictures would be good. Because if they saw a picture of a child performing the item, they know, oh, my child does that. Or the child doesn't do that. So that was the next step we did. So I went to a child with GMF-CS level 3 in Brazil, and another student went to a GMF-CS level 1, and we made several photos of them performing the items. So it's there. The photos in the measure are from children with cerebral palsy.
Yeah, that's great.
It's not children with normal developing doing the items.
Yes.
It's children with cerebral palsy performing the item.
Yeah.
And another interesting thing that we added in this measure is, if I use glasses, like I use glasses here, I have to use it all the time, right?
Yes.
I can talk to you without my glasses. I won't see you well.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing with our equipment that our children use.
Yeah.
If they use orthesis or a walker or a cane, they'll have to use it in their natural environment all the time. You can take them off. Like we do in the clinic. Like the children get to us in the clinic and, throw away your orthesis, throw away your walker. You won't need them here because you can count on me.
Yeah. That's such a good point.
That doesn't occur in the natural environment.
Yeah, that's right.
So in the items that the child is standing and walking, she can use her aids.
Yeah.
That's so important.
So that's important.
And that's a big change as well, because like you said, when they come into clinic, you go, oh, take the AFOs off, and usually the parents will go, they can only stand when they're wearing the AFOs. We're like, I know, but we've got to take orthoses off for this, and it's not measuring their performance.
No, I was just going to say it really, harks back to that point about a focus on performance and.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
It's so good.
And the other thing I wanted to ask you about, Paula, was, obviously we talked a bit about scoring the GMFM and how, when you're doing that in a clinical context, you have your manual that you're, looking through really closely when you're scoring things. How did you adapt or did you adapt? And if so, how did you adapt the scoring for the families?
So our first aim was to do only yes or no.
Okay.
It was to really do it more simple with only yes or no answer, like a dichotomic answer. That was our first premise. But when we started to see that we needed the use of the orthoses or the equipment or the child to hold in something, we thought, no, we have to be able to see if a child progresses, especially if she is young and she's beginning to use a walker, and throughout therapy or the years she loses the walker, she has to be able to show more. So we added half points in these items. So you have the option to score yes, she does, or no, she doesn't. And if she does she need the use of an adaptive equipment, a walker, a cane, a crutch, or she doesn't? And that's where the half points enter. That's where our first points were there.
So already how you've described it, you've got photos, you've got this scoring system that seems to really make sense. My next question on that was, across the GMFCS levels, is this something that you intend that all GMFCS levels will be able to complete?
That's an interesting point, because we know that children with GMF-CS level 5 really aren't able to perform as much as we desire they should be able to, right?
That's right,
And children with GMF-CS level 1 are very well functioning. So they're the two
such a huge
outlines
range
that we have.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So we try to select items that could capture these two demands. So we did our first validity measurement with the tool using a bank data. I showed this at last year's American Academy Developed Medicine and Child Neurology Congress. It's not published. It was a preliminary validation study. So I got 50 children that had a previous GMFM evaluation in a data bank. And I scored the GMF-FR based on their GMFM scores.
Great.
So I got the GMFM scores. I had the score sheet, and I scored the GMF-FR to try to see if it was able to see changes. And I got 10 children in GMF-CS level 1, 10 in GMF-CS level 2, 3, 4, and 5. 10 in each level. We were able to show that children, they were all had a median age of 8 years of age. We showed that both measures, the GMF-M 66 and the GMF-FR scores, were highly correlated. They were 97% correlated.
Wow.
There was a strong and inverse correlation between the GMF-CS and the GMF-FR. That was important also, with a 0.91%. So that was important too. And we saw there was an excellent agreement also between the two measurements, with an ICC of 93.
Wow.
When we made an ANOVA to see the differences between the levels of the GMF-CS, we were able to show discriminate validity between the levels, but especially between GMF-CS 2, 3, and 4. The GMF-CS level 1 in this sample was comparable to the GMF-CS level 2, and the GMF-CS level 4 was comparable to GMF-CS level 5.
Right.
So that was the preliminary validity that we saw. Now I have some updated data that can say in the end with the new measure, the measure being validated now.
Oh, I love that.
That's really good. No, that's really, really good. And I've seen you post a few of those on Twitter and looking at the recruitment for the validation testing as well. So it's very excited to see that. And you've got some samples and some photos that you use for that as well. So I do encourage people to have a look at what you've been posting too, because that's really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. So Paula, can I just ask a quick question about the age range that you can use the GMF-FR with, given that, it's important that we're able to, particularly in those early years, look at the trajectories, I suppose, of development. What ages can you use this for?
Well, we are starting the validation process between the ages of 2 and 18 years old.
Mm-hmm.
So we are getting all the levels that we can classify according to the GMF-CS.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that we won't be able to see children after 18 years old.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe before 2 will be difficult if the child doesn't have a diagnosis of cerebral palsy, right?
Sure.
We know that that's sometimes difficult for us to affirm that the child has a CP and which level of the GMF-CS she's in.
Yeah,
so we know that we don't have too much reliability of this measure before. So
Of course.
Between 2 and 18, that's when we're trying to do our validation study, and I think it will be appropriate for that at that age range.
Yeah,
Fantastic.
Fabulous. So just to build in on that then, so with that age range, in terms of the items that you selected, can you just give us a bit of a rundown? I know you can't go through all 30 of those items, but can you give us a bit of a sample of the kind of items that you picked across each of the domains?
Well, we have less items selected in the domains of lying and rolling, sitting and crawling.
Uh-huh.
As the GMF-CS 66 follows also.
Yep.
Yeah. So we have 6 items in lying and rolling.
Uh-huh.
So we have the 2 hands to the front, reaching and rolling to the sides.
Yep.
And to prone and back, staying in the forearm and the back with head control. That's the items that are lying and rolling.
Great.
In sitting, we are watching the ability for the child to sit with arm propping, to sit without arm propping alone, to pass to sitting in a bench.
Yep.
We're looking at crawling.
Yep.
Crawling. Standing in 4-point position, crawling and or body shuffling, some form of locomotion in that way.
Yep.
In crawling, there are only 3 items in crawling.
Sure.
5 in sitting. And we have 5 in standing. Standing are the items that I like a lot because all of them you can use the walker.
Good. Yeah, that's so good.
You can stand. So you can stand 3 seconds holding, you can stand 20 seconds holding, you can reach to something on the ground and come up holding on.
So great.
And you can sit down and go up from a chair or a small bench and holding on to something. So that's important.
Yep.
That's a great adaptation for children with GMF-CS level 3.
Absolutely.
Because we know they are able to do that.
Yep.
And so there are 5 items in standing. And walking, we have walking, all those items, walking without 2 hands, walking with 1 hand.
Great.
And we have the ability to run.
Yep.
But we didn't use the word run. That's what's important change. We would use the word, does your child keep up with her peers during playing activities?
That's so good.
Yeah.
Because that was an important change that we made because I can be more slow than you when we are playing, but I can keep up with you playing.
Yeah. I feel like you've picked up the items that I would have picked up as well. Like I love when you describe them like, yep, because those are the things I think subjectively, if you're over the phone or you're doing a telehealth, those are questions you would ask families to get an idea of what they do. And now we've got hopefully a really standardized way of asking those questions as well.
Yeah.
And I think one of the items also, we have jumping in one foot and another because we wanted to see this high ability in GMF-CS level 1.
Sure. Yep.
And that's the only one that you can't use a walker because we thought it wouldn't be appropriate. And one item that I really loved was because I saw that when I went to photograph the child at home, like to go up and down stairs. We usually have the option to use the rail or not, right?
Yes. Yep.
And when we have to go up a stairs that we don't have a rail.
Yeah.
The child doesn't go up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's an option. How do we see our parents doing?
Yeah.
They pick up their child, right?
Absolutely.
From
That's
behind.
right. Yep.
And they take them up.
That's right.
They
Yeah.
help them to get up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The caregiver gives them support.
Yep.
Yeah.
So we added that.
Oh, that's so
As a
great. You
scoring
reflected
option.
all of that. That's
Yeah.
so good.
So
See, that's
practical.
exciting. Yeah,
Yeah.
That's a really good thing to capture it.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's how the parents
That's
do.
right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. That's performance.
You can go up a stairs with a walker.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
So the parents have to help them.
That's right. Yeah.
Go up and down.
Absolutely. So, Paula, what are the next steps in using the GMF-FR? You talked a little bit about some of your preliminary findings around the validity, but what else do you need to put in place to get this up and running?
When can we use it? Is basically what we're saying.
Well, we did an interesting part of it, of validation with the parents. That was the first phase just after this paper. We interviewed 12 parents and asked them their opinion of the measure.
Yeah, that's great.
Because we wanted to see if they liked it, right?
Yeah,
Was it
they're the ones
appropriate?
using
Did
it.
the items capture what they do in real life?
So important.
Were the items clear enough? Were the pictures clear enough? Were the scoring appropriate?
Yeah.
We want to see what their opinions were on. So we interviewed 12 parents, and it was really nice because we had to make some changes to the measure. We made changes to the scoring. We made changes to the items. We lowered 2 items down to 28 now. We didn't exclude the items. We incorporated them in one item for like a progressive developmental change, like walking.
Yeah.
The walking, the child walks with 2 hands, one hand or without hand, right? That was a separate item before. But if the child already walks without hand, she doesn't want to walk with 2 hands.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we added a progressive scoring for that.
That's wonderful.
So it's a 1 item only now. So it's a 28 items version now. And this is a version that's under validation.
Okay.
And we are validating it in Brazilian Portuguese and in Canadian, here in English.
Yep.
So the Brazilian version is more, it's in more advanced than me here in Canada. We got ethical approval before. So my master student, his name is Alto Magalhães, he's done already 45 children.
Right.
Data collection, and he saw already that it's really highly correlated with the GMF-66 in person. So he did the GMF-66 in person, and he correlated with the GMF-FR scores. So he's doing it. He's going to, now we are able to go in person again. So we have a Spearman Hole of 94% with that. We have a strong correlation also between the GMF-FR and the GMF-CS with a Spearman Hole of 94 also.
Wow.
And we're beginning to show a good agreement, a moderate agreement between the test-retest scores of parents. We're showing an ICC of 74%.
Wow. That's
But
really
we only had 21 test-retests. So we are trying to get this number a bit higher. But it's really promising.
Yeah.
It's a really promising measure. Our focus is to end this validation this year, to get it released at the end of this year.
Oh, that's great news.
That's wonderful.
That'll be here before we know it.
Yeah, that will be. It will be. Well, we'll make sure we watch this space, and I can't wait to get my hands on it.
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
So, right. Well, now that we have a good idea about this measure, we've got an idea of what's to come. Now we know that the next segment is always going to be the segment that everyone looks forward to coming along as well, and it's called Tell It to Ed. So Ed, as you know, is our producer. He doesn't have a background in child health, but he has been listening on this conversation, and we're interested to see what he thinks about this as well. So, Paula, in a minute or so, I'll get you to summarize this area of research to Ed, and in turn, he'll have time for one question. Take it away, Paula.
Great. Let's see. So, Ed, our purpose was to develop and test a new family completed instrument based on a very famous measure used in the practice of rehabilitation called the gross motor function measure. And this new measure would be appropriate for families to report the gross motor activities of children and adolescents with cerebral palsy at home or in the community. So this measure was developed through a group of experts in childhood disability from Canada and Brazil through several meetings and group discussions during the year of 2020 and 2021. And the new instrument is called Gross Motor Function Family Report. To date, it has 28 items, descriptions, and pictures that illustrate each of the items to make parents and families a form easy to score at home. And the instrument now in 2022 is under validation studies to see if we can score the same across time, if it's able to show differences across time, and this will be able to people to use in Brazil and in Canada and across the world.
That is fabulous. That gets me excited even just hearing it.
Yeah.
All right, Ed, over to you for a question.
Wow. So I've had an introduction into the complexities of all of this, and I'm really kind of intrigued because obviously it's occurred now over the last 2 years, wasn't it, Paula?
Yes.
So I guess I'm very curious as to what kind of impact COVID kind of had on the collection of this kind of data and the thought processes that kind of went on behind the last year and a half. Is there anything that maybe is unique to the last 2 years, or is it something that you can make a much broader generalized statement about?
Oh, great. That's a great question, because I think COVID began our discussions of the need of this new measure, but it's not only appropriate for a COVID state environment, right?
Yeah.
It's a need for our practice because the GMF takes time. And we know that, unfortunately, most therapists opt to not use it because they can't spend a whole session doing an evaluation.
Okay.
And like 40 minutes doing an evaluation of a child, depending on their insurance and everything. So this measure can help them a lot in real practice. Like they can send a link for them to do it at home. They can do it while they are in the waiting rooms, waiting for their children doing therapy. And it's showing that it's real quick. Depending on the level of the GMFCS, you take only 5 minutes to do all the filling in.
So good.
And if you do go through all the measure, you take about 15 minutes to fill it all in. So it doesn't take a long time. And it's nice to see because you have pictures, the questions are easy. So it's not an exhausting measure for parents that we know go through so much. So we hope that this measure really goes into clinical practice as a new measurement to help them to evaluate gross motor function in their children.
That's a good question, Ed.
Yeah,
I think
really good question.
Yeah, I think COVID probably pushed us along the way a little bit for something that was needed. So, great question. Thank you so much, Paula. That was just a wonderful description of this new measure. As you can tell, we're really excited. All you can hear is us just agreeing, and we just can't wait for it to be released. But we'll definitely keep an eye on this space. Hey, Ash?
Sounds like it's not too far away, which is so exciting.
So good. Well, Paula, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today. We've absolutely loved chatting to you all the way in Canada. So thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you very much. And if you let me, I'd just like to acknowledge all my team. I'm not doing this alone, right? So this is a work being conducted and advised by Dr. Peter Rosenbaum and has the the really great eyes of Dr. Virginia Wright, that has a great experience with measurement, Dr. Leslie Wired, Pritchard, and Marilyn Wright, and also a group of Brazilian researchers that are with me from the Participa group. That's nine great colleagues of me.
Yes.
Two of them have already been here, Dr. Egmar Longo and Dona Ana Carolina.
Yeah.
You already interviewed them.
That's right. Love
They
that.
are with us in this team, so I can't not acknowledge all of them.
Yes, that's wonderful. Thank you. And it really highlights, that good research doesn't happen in a vacuum. It takes a lot of people and a lot of people's time and effort.
Yep.
And, we've had the privilege of speaking to you today about the wonderful work that you and your team have done. And, we've been lucky enough to do that over the last 50 episodes as well.
Right.
So
that's right. Yep.
We feel very privileged to be able to do that. So thank you, Paula.
We're not alone, never, right?
Yeah, that's right. Well, remember, to all of our listeners, if you want to have access to the notes for this particular podcast, as well as the link to the paper, head over to our website, researchworks.net. And remember, you can always fill out the CPD form on the website as well if you want to keep this as a record of your PD. But for now, I guess we've got to say goodbye again. Thank you for everyone for listening on episode 50. And thank you, Paula.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Paula.
We'll talk to you all again next time. Bye.
Bye.